All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to our explainer on what is, quite frankly, one of the most elegant frameworks in cognitive science, systemic functional linguistics, or SFL. Now, we are not looking at some static, dusty grammar rulebook today. Instead, think of SFL as the dynamic physics of language. Just as physicists study how molecular forces create the physical world around us, we're going to expose the invisible linguistic forces that bind words into meaning, clauses into conversations, and ultimately construct our entire social reality. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to look at 1. Text as process, 2. Logogenesis, 3. The system of cohesion, 4. Conjunction, and 5. Reference and status. Essentially, we're going to logically zoom all the way from the macro architecture of language right down to the micro tools of lexicogrammar. Okay, starting off with section 1, text as process and the cline of instantiation. You know, historically, it's been really easy to look at a text, say a printed book, as a dead, finished artifact. But in SFL, text is an ongoing, dynamic happening. To really grasp this, we use the cline of instantiation. Think of language like the weather. The overarching system of language, all of its rules, its structures, its potential meanings, that's the climate. But a specific text, like a single conversation you have at a coffee shop, well, that's today's weather. The system and the text are literally the exact same phenomenon. They're just being observed from totally different distances. Moving right along to section 2, logogenesis, and creating meaning over time. So, if a text is a specific weather event, how does that storm actually brew? Well, this brings us to an absolutely beautiful concept called logogenesis. If we break it down, the root logo means discourse, and genesis means creation. So it's literally the creation of meaning in the course of the unfolding of a text. It is that real-time emergent grammar that you're building, clause by clause, every single time you open your mouth to speak. Let's ground this abstract theory in a concrete laboratory experiment from Halliday and Matheson's research. Picture a dinner party in Sydney. Friends are gathered around the table, they're sharing a meal. The host, Craig, kicks off a phase of conversation by saying, "Kate, I must say, this fish is cooked beautifully." Now, this specific instantial choice immediately sets the interpersonal tenor for the entire interaction that follows. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept of what we call a text score. In SFL, we're tracking 3 main metafunctions: textual, interpersonal, and experiential. So as Craig speaks, the theme focuses entirely on the fish, the mood is declarative and it's overwhelmingly positive. The transitivity is relational. He's assigning an attribute to the fish. By mapping these choices out over time, linguists can literally graph the phase shifts in a conversation. You can see exactly when that dinner party shifts from complimenting the food to arguing about politics to just asking someone to pass the salt. All right, section 3, the system of cohesion, or transcending the clause. Up to this point, we really just looked at the individual clause. But what about the molecular linguistic physics that hold an entire 10-minute speech together? Well, these invisible threads are known as the 4 forces of cohesion. They are conjunction, reference, ellipsis, and lexical cohesion. These act as the structural ties, really the textual gravity, that organize our semantics on a macro scale. Which leads us to section 4, conjunction, the rhetorical glue. Conjunction truly is the rhetorical glue of discourse, but it actually does 2 completely distinct jobs for us. External conjunctions link chunks of actual physical experience on a timeline. So, for example, soon they turned the sledges. The word soon links physical time. But on the flip side, internal conjunctions link steps in a rhetorical argument. Think of a phrase like, "Therefore I urge you." Therefore isn't mapping a timeline in the physical world, it's a transition that's entirely internal to the speaker's logic. It's really a masterclass in how language organizes both physical reality and rhetorical architecture. Now, whenever we use conjunctions, we're expanding meaning in one of 3 specific ways. Number 1, elaborating. This is restating or clarifying, like saying "in other words" or "for example." Number 2, extending. That's adding new or maybe contrasting information using "and," "but," or "instead." And number 3, enhancing. This qualifies the text with time, space, or cause, using words like "then," "therefore," or "otherwise." Every single time you speak, you are subconsciously routing your thoughts through these exact systemic network paths. And finally, section 5, status, reference, and tracking identities. So if conjunction is all about transitions, reference is how we track identifiability, basically who or what we're even talking about. To track identities across a conversation, language uses directionality, or what's called fora. It usually starts with exophoric reference, that's pointing outward to the material environment. Craig says this fish while physically pointing at the dinner table. But once it's introduced, the reference becomes endophoric, pointing inward to the text itself. The physical real-world fish simply becomes the pronoun it. Now, what's really interesting here is that inside the text, that endophoric pointing goes in two totally different directions. Anaphoric reference points backward. Think the fish was good. It was perfectly cooked. But cataphoric reference, that points forward to build suspense. Like, listen to this, man could understand the universe. Fun fact for you, politicians absolutely love cataphoric reference because it literally forces the listener to stay tuned in just to figure out what the pronoun is actually referring to. To see anaphoric reference working flawlessly in the wild, just look at children's literature. There was once a velveteen rabbit. He was fat and bunchy. His coat was spotted brown and white. A single, non-specific introduction creates this incredibly strong anaphoric chain of he and his that can seamlessly hold a 50-page narrative together without you ever losing track of the subject. But hey, sometimes we don't even need a pronoun. This is where ellipsis and substitution operate right at the micro level of wording. Back at our dinner table experiment, someone mentions the fish. Jane simply replies, "Mine's cold." She doesn't need to say, "My fish is cold." By presuming wording instead of meaning, we avoid clunky repetition, and we keep that rapid, natural dialogic flow going. And that brings us to the final cohesive force, lexical cohesion. Now, this operates completely independent of grammatical structure. It relies strictly on vocabulary choices that span across long passages of text. In our dinner party example, we can trace motif 1, fish, salmon, cook, smoke, and motif 2, pan, grab, wash. These semantic fields act almost like musical themes in a symphony. They recur, and they weave the entire dinner party into one cohesive, shared experience. So as you step away from this explainer today, I really want you to think about the SFL climate and weather happening all around you. The very next time you sit down for a meal with friends, or even just write an email, pay attention. Listen to the logogenesis. Listen to the real-time creation of meaning. Ask yourself, how do the invisible threads of conjunction, reference, ellipsis, and lexical motifs actually shape your own daily conversations? Because the truth is, you are the architect of this invisible physics every single day. Keep analyzing and keep learning.